when you made that first decision to go to Denver, like I think that was like one of the big ones along the way, right? Like that was the transitional one. So tell me a little bit, tell me a little bit about that time of your life. And like, I know what you said as far as what was driving you, but like, what was it really like to have to make that decision and to pick up?
Well, it was, I had some personal stuff going on that gave me a little extra oomph to take a risk like that. But honestly, I was scared as shit. I couldn't believe what I was doing. I was joking about it at first. I would tell people like, I'm going to go to Denver and get into cannabis, right? Get into weed. And people were like, okay. And before I was even leaving New York, I had a couple of months before I would get to Denver just to see family and kind of take a breather before I jumped in. It's interesting. Before I left Brooklyn, it was probably like a week or two before I left Brooklyn. At my local dive bar, I met this guy from Denver, and he had just moved to New York. He was working in cannabis, and he was like drilling me pretty heavy about the industry and what's the revenues and the tax situation. And at the time, I just really didn't know yet. And he was like, what are you going to do? And he was kind of, he's pushing me. And he said to me, he's like, they're going to eat you alive. They're going to eat you alive. And I'm a pretty tough girl. And of course, I brushed it off. But inside, I was like, shit, like, what am I getting myself into? So when I got to Denver, it was literally like, okay, I knew one person. It was like a friend's ex-girlfriend. She introduced me to one person. And then that person told me about Denver Tech Startup Week, which was the first time they had their cannabis panel. And I researched everyone on the panel, and I essentially walked up to everyone at the end of the panel and I pitched them to give me 5 minutes. And what's interesting is the first person that sat with me, I met with him another day. His name was Zach Marburger. And he basically told me, he's like, Colorado, California, he's like, all of these markets are done. All of the opportunity is in the emerging markets. And he's like, and the second thing is you're just going to have to do everything you can in this industry to learn. There's no book. There's no one that's going to tell you what to do. You just have to really figure it out.
No manual, huh?
No manual. And a couple weeks later, I think it was maybe a couple weeks, a month later, he moved to Chicago to start a company called Cresco. So he is the CTO of Cresco, which was just fascinating through that journey of like the people you meet. Wow. And then the stories that they go on to do. So
how did you spend those 5 minutes with those folks? What were you like? What did you do during those 5 minutes?
I had a pitch ready. I was like, I was always in sales. So I essentially had a pitch of like, I've built my career in sales and corporate sales. I'm from New York City. Like I had some pitch, and I said, I want to apply this into building companies in the cannabis space. What guidance, tips could you offer as I'm trying to find a company to work with? Most people were pretty receptive at the time. So, it's interesting. I met the Flow Hub team when they were just getting off the ground. I think they had probably under 10 people at the time. And then I eventually, I landed a job with a cannabis marketing agency at the time.
So that was job one, right? That was your first one out of there. Yeah. Okay.
Job one. Yeah. So it was a small team, but it was 2015. So you're getting like, at that time, it's just, you have so much interest in the industry. You have so much lack of traction in the sense of everyone's new, right? There's no benchmark, there's no standards. I mean, I jumped in, I didn't even know what CBD was at the time, and I'm pitching services and, I'm getting pitched these like companies that need marketing services. And I don't even know like what their business is. Right. So it was just interesting because everyone's learning at the same time and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. Also dealing with the regulations, obviously, which was very challenging. To be honest, I'm very grateful I went to Denver before California, just because California is a behemoth. I mean,
Right.
you all know it's such a huge market, and
Well, the people are different, the market's different, and it gives, I think Denver was a better stop for you to make along the way before you got there for sure. And at the time you did it, that was probably the only other stop you could have made, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was, I mean, it's wild. There was only a couple markets that had legalization at the time. So I
within
think maybe
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
So within that marketing job, what were you tasked with? What were some of the primary things that you worked on?
So I was head of business development. So my job was to bring in the new clients and pitch them, sell them services. I developed a team. So it was an interesting ride. I was with them for about a year. And then I actually started my own agency. And our first client was Tommy Chong. So we launched the Chong Choice brand in Colorado in 2016, which was fascinating because Snoop had just launched. Willie, I think that was there. I might be missing one other celebrity, but anyways, it was fascinating to see.
It's an exciting time.
Tommy.
That's a super exciting time.
Yeah, it was an exciting time, and it was awesome to work with Tommy. Just his background, obviously. I mean, he's a legend in the industry for decades. So it was great, and it was also like and I can't at the time. I guess this is for me. You're just learning so much about cultivation practices and what really good weed is, and it was just awesome. It really was.
So you made this bold move, right? From New York to Denver. You had the business development background, right? In the corporate world. And was that your angle at first when you get there? Hey, I know so many genres you can get into when it comes to the cannabis industry. Did you focus maybe on the business development end first, or you were just down for anything?
Yes, that's just what I knew. And I knew that was my strength. So I leaned into that because I knew I would not know what I was doing in any other way. So I just kind of leaned on my strength as much as possible. And I tried to be open. I mean, I was prepared to be a bud tender. I was, honestly, I was trying to take, Zach's advice. I was trying to take that on very seriously. Like I was down to do anything just to learn. So, awesome. I think again, like the company I worked for was great just because I got so much exposure from different companies.
I'm sure you made a lot of contacts prior to making that move to start your own thing. So tell us about starting up your own thing and some of the challenges. What were the highlights? What were the lowlights? Give us the down and dirty, because we all want to know. It's not so so glamorous all the time. I'm assuming.
It was another. I mean, I think it was another like, oh my God, what am I doing? This is scary, right? It wasn't exactly planned either, but I'll skip over those details for now. But it was kind of circumstance meets opportunity. You're also looking at, okay, do I fund this myself? At the time also, it's 2016, 17. Having a marketing agency in cannabis is tough because you're not exactly getting market rates for your services. It's marketing is one of those things that it's the last thing cannabis companies are finding a budget for because of 280E and all of that. So, even talking, I did take on investors for a period. They were traditional money people, so they did not understand cannabis at all. And that was a big challenge, understanding, clients would run out of money. You can't put the word cannabis in your legal entity name because you won't get a bank account and you could get blacklisted from banks. Those types of things.
Those little things, huh?
Yeah. So, I think times have changed significantly, but it was challenging. It was hard to keep cash flow. I mean, ultimately, in 2017, I moved to California with my company I wanted to be in California ahead of adult use taking effect. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't a pleasant experience. I learned a ton. I worked with a large distributor out in California, and I was in 50 dispensaries easily in a couple of months from Northern to Southern California. I really started to understand that market and how different it was from Denver. But it's just the volatility of that time. My investors they could not stomach the industry. So we decided to part ways, and, I saw where the industry was heading in California then, and it was not pretty. I thought it was going to take, in my mind, in 2017, I said, this market has like 5 to 7 years to slightly stabilize. We've never seen it really stabilize. So I wasn't interested in digging my heels in California. My whole goal was to get back to New York. But of course, the East Coast was just taking its time, and with many. So I actually ended up in Chicago.
So Devon, let me interrupt you for a second, Devon. So when you were working, so your clients, so your agency was in Denver, or was that in California?
It was I started it in Denver.
Okay.
And then I branched out to LA. So I moved to LA in 2017.
And so you were working with clients both in Colorado and California, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah, they were Colorado, California. There was a couple on the East Coast that, I think there was at least one in Maryland. I mean, Maryland was just coming online. And it was across operators. Like one of our clients was a curing technology company. It was fascinating. So we worked with all different types of businesses.
Yeah, that's cool. So